Meanwhile, looking at the world of the NFL with the salary cap bump, talking about unintended consequences, the fact that now every team has more money than they had prior to this bump, certainly the Seahawks being a beneficiary of that, but they're not alone. So does that make it harder to go after free agents, do you think? Everybody else has got spending power now that they didn't have prior to this.
Yeah. Well, remember what John said last week about how you try to fill all the holes through free agency, and a lot of times you go overboard and overspend and things like that. But I don't know. I don't know what And you sent the link on Justin Madubuike, who had a really good year this last year. But for these defensive tackles, it's amazing how and I wouldn't be surprised to see them. That would be. It'd be kind of shocking if it was their first signing to get a guy like this. I think they're going to slap the tag on him.
Yeah, Eric DeCosta, the Ravens GM, says they'll tag him if they don't get a long-term deal done.
And I think their tag is like $20 million. I'm like, if you're a defensive tackle, you can't complain. I mean, it's twice as much as what running backs are getting.
Yeah,
as far as the tag.
Go ahead, tag me. You'd be like Kirk Cousins, who's like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
who's made a fortune doing that.
Right, and the tag number is what it's like an average of the top five at your position. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know why people look at that so negatively. But I mean, you look at the trajectory of this guy's career, and this is what Madubuike specifically, just seeing where he was drafted and the kind of player that he became. He was a third-round draft choice. And this guy just got better. First year, only played in 10 games, got 1 sack. Then he got 2 the next year, then 5.5, and then 13 this last year. He's a Pro Bowler. So, yeah, I don't, we were talking about Dre Jones and seeing, if maybe he was a guy that they might bring back. But this is, I wonder if, a player like this that they might, who knows? Mike McDonald might say, hey, man, this is the key to this defense that I'm running. And, we need to get a guy just like Madubuike, who just for an inside guy to get 13 sacks, it's miraculous.
Well, it's clearly the presence of Jadeveon Clowney that brought him to that level, right? They had to account for Clowney, so it opened things up for Madubuike.
Yeah, maybe.
No, I'm joking, but there could be something to that because he had arguably his best season. Talking about Clowney.
Yeah.
9.5 sack. I mean, you're looking at a guy who's on the downside of his career age-wise by the typical standard that's out there, and he had a huge impact with that team this year. So not sure what Mike McDonald did with him to get him to that point, and maybe it's all the talent he's surrounded with that opened things up for him. But
you like to think that it's his system, right? And that will unlock, some players.
All of a sudden he comes here and Jaron Reed has a career year and Uchenna has a career year. And if Darrell Taylor's here, anybody who we're kind of looking at going, man, they just haven't quite taken that step yet. Yeah, I'd love to think that it's his system that's the cure for him.
Right. Well, and I think, the bigger question really is Leonard Williams. I mean, if you're talking about interior guys, because they traded for him and, they didn't pay hardly anything for him. They did give up a second and, a fifth. And
600, what did we say, 647, I think? 647,000 was the prorated portion of the veteran minimum.
Right. And when I saw that number, I was like, no, I think that's per game. It has to be, right? That was just nothing. I mean, it was dirt cheap other than the second round draft.
It's the draft pick. I mean, if they, hypothetically, if they had given up a fifth and still pay that money, for whatever reason, just playing that out, would you still have the same urgency to get him back? Because I feel like that creates a level of urgency to say, you can't give up a second-round pick for a guy that played 10 games for you, and then he's gone.
Right.
It feels like that increases the urgency to bring him back because of what they gave up for him, and he didn't play a full season, 10 games.
That'll be a good question for John on Thursday. Not a great question, but a good question, Bob. Because
you might say great. You never know.
I would think that you would have to resist that temptation. That we gave it away at that point, knowing that we may not sign him, and they will get some kind of compensatory pick if he does sign somewhere else. But I'm very curious to see what happens with Leonard Williams and just in general, who are the players that fit into this defense? Or maybe it's just one that Mike McDonald thinks, hey, pretty much anybody, it's the system. And I don't know if there's anybody that's specific to it, but, Yeah, I'm curious if you're gonna see a signing, whether it's Leonard Williams or whoever they get at linebacker, going, this is why we need this guy, because of my defense does this and that, and we need to get this sort of production out of this player, and be very curious to see how that all goes down. But I would bet that John would answer that question like, yeah, I'm not gonna make any crazy decisions about paying this guy or whatever kind of contract just because we gave up a second rounder for him.
Well, what about you? Just individually, what you watched of him, just what they paid aside, do you feel like, man, you need that guy back? Or do you feel like we can find somebody to do what he does?
Yeah, I think he's pretty unique. I mean, for a guy who is that big and that fast, and, the thing, John told me, hey, go look at his 49er performance when he was with the Giants, and he just wasn't, nobody could double team him. I mean, and he was making tackles with one guy blocking him, and he's grabbing the guy, from it was like the fight with Cam Newton, where he's like holding one guy in a headlock and punching another guy. I mean, that's kind of what he looks like. I think he's special, and I think that is something that they'll get done. And the other thing about him is that they've had their eye on him for a long time, probably since the draft. But yeah, I think that's going to be one I would say you can count on. I mean, obviously it's not 100%, but I'm pretty sure.
I'll be interested to see what the price tag's going to be for him. It's, I mean, you talked about the cap or the tag number, which is exceedingly high and pretty punitive to your salary cap. So most of these teams, I assume, don't want to use that. But you look at some of the other guys. I mean, Chris Jones, it feels like the Chiefs have made it pretty clear they're going to do what they need to do to get him back. So he's not going anywhere. I mean, he's technically a free agent. Christian Wilkins, Fletcher Cox, Grover Stewart, DJ Reader, Danico Autry. Those are some of your free agent defensive tackles out there.
Yeah.
So it feels like, if you're not going to get Chris Jones, which it doesn't sound like you will, you're not going to get Matabike, who it sounds like, well, they've said, yeah, if we can't work out a long-term deal, he's going to get tagged, so he's not leaving Baltimore. Feels like Williams might be the next best guy out there. That if you're not going to get those two, you're not going to improve upon that spot. Then get what you know.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out what the value is of these guys like Matabike. I mean, if he didn't have the 13 sacks, I would have never heard of him.
Yeah,
right? I mean, and I think a lot of that's the thing. I mean, that's a position where you've got to really, pay attention to how is he affecting the defense. And that's the thing I know as a linebacker, a lot of times the double team happens on the defensive line, and then one of those guys comes up to block you. When you have a guy that can occupy, the guard, the guy that's coming up, and now your linebacker can run around and, be free and not get blocked. Love that guy. Love him. I remember Cortez Kennedy. The Greg Cragen was a nose guard in Denver, and there were so many times where it would be like an outside zone play, and I would be running out there, and I'd see the guard that was trying to come out and block me, and he would just give him a little grab, just a little jersey pull,
little cheat.
There. Yeah, little bit of cheat, just like the offensive players do. So it's a very valuable position, and obviously the NFL values it because the tag number is $20 million, which I think is like third or fourth, maybe. I don't know. Edge rushers probably more, but
certainly quarterbacks.
Yeah,
probably wide receivers.
Maybe, yeah. But, I mean, you look at tight ends and running backs are the two lowest, other than special teams.